morning, Chapel. We hope you've all had a great week so far.
I know our students had an awesome weekend. Let's recap some of the events.
The baseball team went head-to-head with St. Andrews University last Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, winning 2 of their 3 games. The Royals improved their season with the wins this past weekend. There were tons of awesome plays made on the field. Shout out to Gerson Sotolonga, who finished 2-2 with a home run, Jesse Haney, who went 2-4, and Taylor Briggs, bringing in 2-5 with an RBI. Great work, guys!
Our track team is back from nationals, and they ran away with a couple of All-American awards and some personal records at the meet in Houghton, New York. Sprinter and jumpers Tobias Durham and Ocean Hyman won All-American awards. Awesome job, you guys. You made Warner very proud. Student Life hosted a movie night on the court showing Race, the story of Jesse Owens. It was a nice evening honoring Black History Month with our fellow classmates.
Well, that wraps it up for this week, you guys.
Make sure you guys all head to the clock tower at noon for the Collegiate Day of Prayer. See you guys next week.
Bye! Good morning.
It's coming.
Thursday.
March 2nd?
March 2nd.
You're not ready. You are not ready.
At 8 p.m. 8 p.m.
Paint Wars.
Paint Wars. Paint Wars.
Paint Wars.
Paint Wars.
Paint Wars.
Paint Wars. Are you ready? Yes.
It's coming.
Good morning, everyone. As you can see, Paint Wars is going to be March 2nd, next Thursday, 8 o'clock. Be there, Spencer Field. Also, Legoland is hiring March 2nd, also Thursday from 10 to 1. More information on that, you're going to talk to Dr. Moyer, wherever he may be on campus. And also, we're having a movie night this Friday in the cafeteria. More information, go to Student Life.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning, Warner. How are you today? Thursday night, I'm there. I'll be the guy with the real white t-shirt on. It's my privilege today to introduce our speaker. And I'm going to introduce him, and then following that introduction, we're going to have a wonderful praise dance that you're going to get to watch. And as they get started, I want you to take some time and watch some of the slides on the screen, because I think it'll really help prepare you for the time of worship. Okay, we are really privileged today to have Myron Steeves, former dean of the Trinity Law School, to be with us today. He's a Biola graduate, also went to Georgetown for his law degree, and I was able to partner and work with Myron when I was at Trinity. And the Trinity Law School is in Orange County, California. Love that place. Now, when I was in college, I had no idea. Great jokes. My all-time favorite is, does anybody know the difference between an attorney and a catfish? And the other one's a fish. You guys know me today. First group was a little better. But if you were to visit me in my office, the biggest book on the shelf is this red book in higher education law. And there is probably not a week that goes by that I have to think about or look at either legislation or law. And so I just think it is so valuable for you to understand more about the law and what attorneys do. It's not just about those billboards when you drive down the street and you say, if you're in an accident, call this number. But attorneys are all around doing all kinds of things. Now, this is one of my favorite pictures from going out to visit the law school in California. This is a mobile legal clinic. So inside this bus, instead of seats, it had like a mini law office. And it was really cool. Right next to the van, you would see the soup kitchen. And then right next to that, you would see a mobile medical clinic. So folks that had financial need or homeless people, they could come to this area in Santa Ana and come for help. And I was just blown away as our law students and law faculty would deal with folks that maybe were dealing with immigration issues or custody issues or tickets or fines. And attorneys do a great job serving us and serving our communities. So let's make sure we give a nice warm welcome to Myron Steeves right after the praise dance.
I used to be so broken, lost, empty. A heart with no beat, a singer with no song to sing. So I know the feeling, the silence is deafening. But in your pain lies a blessing, a sweet and sour victory. So keep walking, 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 though it seems so far. No
hard to follow that with just standing here. But I'm just going to stand for the next 20 minutes. I wanted to say a couple words about the bus that you saw on the earlier slide. This is one of the ministries at Trinity Law School that I think shows the great things that lawyers can do, which we often don't think about what they can contribute. To give an example of the kind of person that was helped by that bus, we take the bus down to the heart of Santa Ana, California, which has got a lot of homeless people. And there's a van that provides chili and a van that provides legal services, so they both get mobbed. And although the crowd's a little bit bigger at the chili wagon. The kind of problems we face, we had a woman coming that was shaking and shivering and clearly visibly suffering physically. And it turned out that she had been living in a weekly motel and took serious prescription meds, got behind in her payments, so the motel owner locked her out and kept the meds as security for the back payment on rent, which is totally illegal on several grounds. But try as she could, she wasn't going to get her meds without paying the debt, and she ended up living on the streets and came and saw one of our students at the van. And all it took was a phone call, and everything got cleared up right away. Sometimes the powerlessness of people on the streets feeds into the problems that they face. And it's just remarkable what can be done using the right kind of pressure under the law that makes that really helpful. I'm going to try in the next 20 minutes to squeeze 3 units of graduate legal education in. So I've got to throw out all the illustrations and just get down to the conclusion. I'll try to cover this as quickly as possible on the issue of religious liberty in America. I want to start by saying that we're going to be talking about religion broadly, not just Christianity, but religion generally in America. And as evangelical Christians, sometimes we're actually uncomfortable with the word religion because we think our relationship with Jesus Christ transcends just religious values. It's something much, much deeper. And yet, it is part of the evangelical mindset that we want all religious people, even non-Christian religious people, to have liberty, because at the very essence of our Christian faith, we want people to make a personal commitment to Jesus Christ that's made freely, not coerced by society or coerced by some kind of law. And in order to do that, we need all people in the population to have freedom to choose how to worship, who to worship, whether to worship, because only in that environment can we really experience evangelism at its greatest effect. So religious liberty is really important to us. And happily, the United States Constitution provides a great protection to religion in the First Amendment. And the first 14 words of the amendment are set forth here. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. There's actually 2 religious liberties here. One is free exercise. That means the ability to worship and express your faith freely. That's what we're going to be talking about mostly in the next few minutes. But I want to mention in passing the other one. The Establishment Clause means that the government can't get into religious business. We can't have a state church because of this clause. The 2 work together to make one of the best environments in the world for religious freedom. But this religious freedom comes under attack. And it comes under attack largely from the state, both the federal government and state government, trying to contain religious enthusiasm in ways that have made this kind of difficult. And I want to mention 2 ways that each of these clauses has suffered a bit under the law. One is the tendency of the government to treat non-religion, that is, whatever atheists do, or people that are just not interested in religion, to treat that like it's a religion itself, so that non-belief is equal to belief in something or someone. And that's just crazy, because the rest of our life, we don't treat not doing something as if it is something. When you're not eating, you don't call that a really unique kind of cuisine. When you have a fan that has different speeds, you don't consider off being one of the speeds. You don't call sitting on a sofa really low impact workout. It takes actually doing something like a religious expression to count as a religion. And treating non-religion like religion has confused the law in this area. Another thing that is a problem is the government has gotten so zealous in not looking like it is in the religion business, in the establishment of religion, that it actually fights religion in a public sphere. And there's something that's really odd about this, because we as human beings are naturally kind of religious oriented. We all pursue the transcendent to some extent, even if not part of a specific religious faith. And for the state to require its employees, of whom there are a lot of them, public school teachers are part of the government system, to act like we're not religious just because we're in a government-influenced area has a really weird effect. And I don't think that I can illustrate this more effectively than what the government's attempt to de-Christianize Christmas has meant, so that every December 25th, under our state system, we seem to honor it as being kind of an important day, but we can't really talk about why. So we've developed this kind of musical theme that suggests Christmas is about snow. So we sing songs like "Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow," knowing very well that the chance of it snowing in Central Florida is no greater this year than it was last year, the year before, the year before. And totally inane songs that nobody likes, like Winter Wonderland, are sung all the time. Why? Because it doesn't mention Jesus. It mentions winter. And this is a way in which we see that the state's attitude towards leeching religion out of public life means we've got to replace it with something. And that's something that's just really kind of strange. So in this environment, we deal with challenges that we have had to being a religious person in America tougher in some ways than it has ever been before. And I want to give an example of the area where our faith is under the greatest attack that it has ever been before. And I've got to do that by getting a little bit deep in the weeds on how the Constitution is interpreted first. So bear with me for about the next 4 minutes, and we'll get through the constitutional interpretation side as quickly as possible, and then we'll apply it to the religion context. First of all, in our system of government, every law has to make sense in some way. Go to the next slide. The rational basis test is a test applied to every law. That is, all laws must be rationally related to a legitimate government interest. We can't have totally random, bizarre laws, like people over 6'4" can't drive Volkswagens. There's no legitimate government interest in a law like that, so it doesn't survive. Kind of serious laws where you know what the motivation is, but they're not allowed because they're not rationally related to a legitimate government interest. For example, there was a community that tried passing a law that prohibited group houses for the mentally ill in a residential neighborhood. This went up before the U.S. Supreme Court and was struck down on the grounds that there is no legitimate government interest in making it difficult to find a place for people with mental problems to live. So as a result, it didn't pass this test. It's almost impossible for a law not to meet this low standard, but there are a few examples where it hasn't. Apart from these, we have some laws in the United States, some rights under our Constitution that are considered so great, they're held up to a much higher standard. And that's the fundamental rights test. And in order for a law to surpass this, when it is a law that challenges a deeply held right under our Constitution, the law has to be narrowly tailored to a compelling government interest using the least restrictive means. Probably the best known in this area is equal rights, that prevents the government from being engaged in activities that discriminate on the basis of race and sex and a variety of other protected areas. Now, it doesn't mean that there can't be some laws that can't survive this kind of analysis. To give an example, the Equal Protection Clause of the United States is interpreted to mean that the government cannot discriminate on the grounds of race. But there are some times when race does factor into a law where it seems like a good idea. For example, in state universities, having a diverse student body might seem like an important value, even though through regular admissions processes, the population might not be diverse. So a diverse student body at a state university survives the compelling government interest test. There is a compelling interest in diversity. And so a minor limitation on color blindness, that is recruiting efforts that help to seek a racially diverse student body, will survive this. So even though the Equal Protection Clause makes racial discrimination forbidden, if it can survive very narrowly the compelling government interest test, it can survive. Now, logic would tell you that because we've got these deep constitutional freedoms of religion, that they should be subject to this fundamental rights test, that the state should not be able to pass laws that interfere with religion unless there's a really compelling reason to do so. But 25 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court said no to this issue, that our religious liberty only protects belief and it's only subject to the rational basis test. I'll tell you the context in which this came up, because it was really an interesting case, 1992 case of Employment Division versus Smith. The Native American Church is an indigenous religion based upon Native American religions with a kind of Christian overlay to it that has a sacramental rite that involves smoking peyote, a hallucinogen. And it's actually encouraged because of a tendency in the Native American community towards alcoholism. Peyote actually has helped in combating alcoholism, so it is respected in the community. But the state of Oregon outlawed the smoking of peyote. So you've got a law of general application for which there is a religious reason for an excuse from it. Two individuals who are members of the Native American Church that use peyote on Sunday morning were dismissed from their jobs on Monday because they violated the anti-peyote rule. Interesting jobs that they have. They were drug counselors, which makes this really kind of an interesting case. But they challenged the penalty for firing. They weren't eligible for unemployment benefits. It made its way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court rejected the idea that religious liberty is subject to this fundamental rights analysis, and rather said, when Oregon passed the law banning peyote use, they didn't have a religious motivation for doing so. This is a general law protecting health, and therefore there's no religious exemption from it. So this law has been on the books for 25 years. A lot of people grumbled against it, not a lot of big challenges, but it has started to come up recently in the area of discrimination on sexual orientation. And one of the worst cases for religious liberty in the United States, I would say perhaps one of the three worst ones to happen in the last 50 years, was decided a week ago today. The state of Washington, Washington versus Arlene's Flowers, involved a florist who ran a family florist business. Her mother was Arlene, who started the flower shop. And the defendant in this case, Mariel Stutzman, was her daughter, who is now 72, so she's been around doing this for a long time. She is a devout Southern Baptist, does not appear to be strongly anti-gay. A number of her customers were gay, knowingly. Some of her employees were gay. One of her best customers was a gay man who was about to get married to another man. He asked if she would provide the flower arrangements for the wedding. And she sat down and she said, because of my relationship with Jesus Christ, I don't believe that I can provide the flowers for your wedding. But I know a florist who's very, very good that would be happy to provide them for you. I'm sorry, but this is the way that things stand. And he left, and it would have ended there, but word got out to the state of Washington that came down on her for violating an anti-discrimination law in Washington, which carried a steep penalty and ultimately shut down her business. She would have faced millions of dollars in legal fees, but legal services have been provided for the most part at no charge to her. But she is finished. She's 72 years old, has no retirement savings, no business. It's the end of the line for her. And whether you agree with her decision or not, you can't argue with the fact that you know people whose faith commitment is such that they would have the same response, that I don't generally discriminate against any customers, but in this instance, this is just something I can't do, but I can accommodate you, I can find a way that you can get this done. And the price that she paid for her faith is that she is financially ruined. She has appealed the matter to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court doesn't have to take the matter up. Things move slowly there, so you will hear about this in the news the next year if the Supreme Court takes it up, but there's no guarantee there. But this is the direction that the country is moving in religious liberty because the Supreme Court has rejected this fundamental rights analysis and applying it to cases like Arlene's Flowers. This is a challenge for us because if this survives, it is going to get worse, and it's going to get worse in ways that affect all of us in this room, even if we are not in the flower arranging business. For example, it is very likely that if you pursue a career that involves getting a license from the state, you may have to agree to behaviors before you're allowed to get a license. For me as an attorney, who can only practice law because of a license from the state of California, it's a bit bothersome thinking that the day may come where I have to sacrifice my license because there's no religious exemption for carrying out practices that I don't engage in. In some states, this is a very real concern now. That's true for all licensed professions. Perhaps nowhere is this more difficult than those that go into counseling jobs, where you're mandated to counsel a certain way, and if you don't do so, you don't get to keep your license. So what do we do about this? First of all, there's room for activism. Do everything politically that can be done to make sure that religious liberty stays protected as one of our most important rights, if not the most important right. You do that by voting. You do that by talking the issue up, contacting your elected representatives. Activism helps tremendously. And curiously, the only real change that we're going to see in this area comes not from activism, but from evangelism. As our nation has shifted, as it has become less and less beholden to the Christian faith, you can't get these things back just by talking people down without impacting their hearts at a deepest level. Ultimately, the only people that really care about religious liberty are people who really care about the relationship with God. So while our opportunities for sharing our faith are unimpeded by anything in this country, we should do our part to share our faith as much as possible to address this really great need. And then finally, of course, not least of all, prayer. We should pray for our nation in protecting this, one of the greatest rights that has ever been granted or recognized by any country in the world, that even when it's under attack, it's still a really fantastic right, and we should do everything we can to seek its growth through prayer and expansion. And now that we come to the end of our half hour, we've got a chance to pray right now. So let us pray as we move on to the rest of the day. Dear Lord, we thank you that we live in a nation where we are free to worship you and do so without fear of any retaliation from the state. We thank you that as you have drawn us to you, you have allowed us to live in a nation that has this unbelievable liberty. And as we enter a time when we can see some of this liberty cracking in some ways, we pray that you would be with us, that we might be faithful in showing our love for others in your name by seeking to protect one of these great rights that has done great things for us in the past, and we pray will do great things for us in the future. And we pray that in all of this, that we might be faithful to you in all that we face, that we might never lose courage to stand up for you, and that in all that we do, we might be a leavening influence on the world. We would pray that you would protect our religious liberty we experience, and that you might give us a passion to demonstrate our love for you and our love for others by protecting and advancing this right. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you.